Greetings, cultivators from around the world. Jordan River here, back at you with more Growcast. I'm an island boy now. Today we have Dr. Coco back on the line. Good friend of the show. He's here to revisit vapor pressure deficit. That's right. We went into it last episode, but this time we're diving deep. This is 45 minutes straight on VPD, what it's actually good for, how it's misunderstood, and how it can be a bit of a red herring to some growers. It's a great episode. I hope you learn a lot. I know you will. Before we get into it with Dr. Coco, though, shout out to AC Infinity, my favorite grow gear manufacturers. ACinfinity.com. Always use code GROWCAST15. Grab yourself a new tent, a new light. Grab yourself a grow kit. Expand that grow room. Get that veg tent going so you can do some staggered runs. Code GROWCAST15 works on all the products at AC Infinity and the grow kits, which come with everything you need to get started growing. Of course, AC Infinity makes amazing, durable tents. They make the best oscillating and inline fans in the game. They make grow lights. They make grow pots. They got scissors. They got protective eyewear. Everything you need is at ACinfinity.com, and code GROWCAST15 is the code you use to save. Everybody, you're helping us keep our lights on here, and you're supporting an awesome company, our partners, AC Infinity. We've been with them for years and years now. I remember discovering them when they just had the Cloud line, their inline fans, and now they have all these goodies from the Cloud Ray oscillator to the Cloud Forge humidifier. Find it all. Always use code GROWCAST15, and thank you, AC Infinity. ACinfinity.com. All right, let's get into it with Dr. Coco. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the show. Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to Growcast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in again today. Before we get started, as always, I urge you to share this show. Turn someone on to Growcast. Turn someone on to growing. It's the best thing you can do to help us on our mission of overgrow. Make sure you're subscribed, hit that follow button, and big thank you to the members, growcastpodcast.com, to see everything we're doing. All right, everyone. We got a return guest. My good friend is back on the line. One of the most frequent guests on this show, I think, if you total up all the appearances. You know him, you love him. Dr. Coco is back. What's up, Dr. Coco?
Hey, Jordan River. I am excited to be back. It's been a minute since we've done a show. So yeah, I'm been on quite a bit, but I'm happy to be back.
Dude, we love you. You're one of the all-time favorite guests. And weirdly enough, like we both got busy schedules, but it seems like we always find time around the new year. You have the New Year's Grow Challenge every single year. And it's like year after year, I find myself around the holidays being like, hey, you got time for a podcast? And then here we are, the 2024 New Year's Grow Challenge about to kick off. First of all, how many have you done so far? Which number is this?
This is the sixth New Year's Grow Challenge. Fifth or sixth annual New Year's Grow Challenge.
You're old, is what I'm saying.
I know, we're getting up there. Yeah, it's fun, man. It's, New Year's Day, we usually wait for ball drop at midnight and to drop our seeds right when the new year starts.
Oh, that's fun.
And everybody kind of starts at the same time and we just grow together. We do different kind of things on the side during the grows to have fun and to learn about growing. We call it the New Year's Grow Challenge. It's really a grow along. It's a way to bring new growers and, experienced growers together and share tips and tricks and get to, support everybody through their grow.
Nice. Well, for the first time listeners, tell them where to go. Obviously, cocoforcannabis.com, how to find the Grow Challenge, and then the side challenge you're doing.
Yeah. So you want to get in the New Year's Grow Challenge, you just go to cocoforcannabis.com/challenge. You just click on the challenge button in the menu, sign up. It's totally free. And this year, we're sort of opening up different ways you can participate. So, we'd like you to start a journal and tell us where you're going to be sort of sharing your grow, whether it's there in the journal on Coco for Cannabis, or a lot of people just want to, post about their grow on Instagram. So they'll tell us what their Instagram handle is or their YouTube channel or something like that. And then, we all follow around. We are all growing at the same time. And this year, we usually do different sort of side challenges. We've done the party cup challenge a number of times. We've done the one cola challenge where you grow like one plant in a specific way. This year, we're doing a cloning challenge. So it's going to be a little bit different. The grow starts on January 1st. And then on February 5th, so just like 35 days later, we're going to have clone cutting day, where you try to take cuttings off of your plant and get them to root. So we're going to have some prizes for the smallest rooted cutting. and the largest rooted cutting, and just have some fun, get different people cloning in different ways and sort of showing it off. So, if you've never done cloning before, this is going to be a great opportunity to take some cuts, to see tons of other people, to kind of compare your process and to learn from a lot of other people doing it at exactly the same time. If you have cut clones before, if you do this all the time, then, try to take the smallest cutting that you can get to root or the largest cutting that you can get to root and, teach all these newbies that are going to be trying to do it for the first time, your masterful methods. So that's really what the Grow Challenge is all about. We try to toss in some prizes there, but it's never for just sort of like being the best grower. It's really about being involved and sharing what you're doing and being part of a community of growers.
Nice, man. I love it. And I love that clone talk. We're overdue for some. So maybe we'll have you back on around that time.
Oh, I'd love to.
Just talk about all the nitty gritty stuff. Talk about, best practices. And,
we could talk about different ways that people are cloning.
Yeah. Hormones
Think about,
and roots.
how it worked out maybe right after the clone challenge. I could come back with sort of an after incident report and talk about what worked well, what didn't, or what different people had success with. But I'm really excited. I always get excited about seeing the side challenges. In the last spring autoflower challenge, we did grow the biggest autoflower.
How did that go? What was the height on the biggest one?
We didn't do it based on the height specifically. We did it based on sort of like bulk of the plant. But it's a pretty big plant. So yeah, that was a fun demonstration to sort of show people that think, autos are always small, how damn big you can grow some of these autos if you really get your grow together, as it were.
Hell yeah, brother.
And this cloning challenge, I think it's going to be fun to see how fast people get roots in different styles. I'm really interested to see who can get roots on the smallest cutting, who can get roots on the largest cutting. And since these plants are only going to be 35 days old that we're taking the cuttings from, like how large can the largest cutting be? I'm looking for somebody who's going to, chop their whole plant down and try to re-root it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Which I've seen.
Like the biggest cutting is just I gotta cut it at the soil, and now I'm gonna re-root the whole plant.
Someone's gonna go for that prize and do that.
Do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I like that, man. That's good stuff. And there's a million ways to do it.
Yeah. So if you don't join the New Year's Grow Challenge, come by, check it out. See how everybody's doing on these cloning adventures that we get into in the early February, and it's always fun to get dozens of growers growing together.
Actually goes nicely with our subject, because I feel like what we're talking about today is probably particularly important during like that stage, the early stage, rooting stage.
Yeah.
We're having you back on, man. We're having you back on for a repeat topic. This usually doesn't happen, but I feel like it's well worth it. We're revisiting VPD today. VPD, Coco. Those three letters.
I love it. Yeah. VPD is such an interesting metric in growing. I feel like, brand new growers don't know what VPD is. And then sometime, maybe towards the end of their first grow or like in their second grow or something, they learn about VPD and then they think it's the end all and be all of everything. And it's like the only thing they need to know. So it's an interesting metric that growers seem to almost inappropriately fall in love with.
It's really funny that you say that. And I want to say, like, we're going to, for all my VPD heads out there, I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers here. We're going to go over like where it is genuinely useful. But that being said, Coco, I got to agree with you. I find that a lot of growers discover VPD and see that chart and then do something to their grow. It's kind of like a red herring. They might change their grow in a way that is actually not beneficial for the plants. So that's what inspired me to revisit this.
Chasing VPD, you can definitely get either your temperature or your relative humidity out of pocket, out of sort of the acceptable range, and that can cause problems for itself. So that's a really important point. I think I think it's brilliant to start there. Climate is important for lots of reasons. And VPD is one metric that we measure climate with. It's really important for transpiration. VPD basically determines the rate of transpiration from the plant. And so it's an important metric, but temperature and relative humidity, which sort of are what makes up VPD. VPD is, the result of the intersection of the temperature and the relative humidity. But relative humidity and temperature are both important for a lot of other reasons.
Independently.
Too.
Right.
Yeah, independently of transpiration.
Yeah.
So VPD is important. I think it's important for growers to sort of have a working understanding of how VPD operates in their grow. There's, some ways that we can manage VPD, or we can manage other things when we can't manage VPD. So being aware of that, but you can definitely get yourself into trouble if you're just chasing a VPD target. And if you put VPD as, the highest goal and stop paying independent attention to relative humidity and temperature.
And that's what I want to go back over today. You had some really good stuff to say last time, but let's start with a recap. Like, let's define VPD, vapor pressure deficit.
Yep.
Like you said, an environmental metric.
Yeah.
That's the first takeaway that I want to put out there. Some people talk about it almost like they're talking about like leaf tissue nutrient content. Like, this is the target and you hit the target. It's like, it has nothing to do with the plant necessarily. It's an environmental metric. And then they've found that transpiration does well within this range generally. Is that an accurate way to put it?
Yeah, absolutely. VPD is describing the environmental condition of the air. And basically, I think the helpful way to kind of think of it is VPD is how thirsty the air is.
Oh, I love that.
That might be a little bit weird, but high VPD is really thirsty air. Low VPD is not thirsty air, right? It's already wet air. So if you think about it like that, yeah, I think it can help you sort of manage your grow in some ways. So high VPD, thirsty air is caused by high temperatures and or low relative humidity.
Right.
So if the relative humidity is low, the VPD is going to be pretty high at any temperature. But if the relative humidity is low and the temperature is high, that's really thirsty. Think like, Arizona in the summer, right? Hot, dry air, and water's just going to evaporate into it very quickly, right?
Right.
Low VPD is wet or cold air. So a high relative humidity or a low temperature is a low VPD. So think, like someplace cold and raining, like Seattle in the winter,
yeah.
maybe. Yeah. If you take a shower and you dry yourself with the towel and you hang the towel up on the rack, the towel's going to get mildew the next day.
Yeah, right. It's not even going to dry.
Right. In Arizona, the towel's dry again. You could take another shower right away. And by the time you get out of the next shower, the towel's dry again to dry you off. Right.
Right. The sucking of that water out of the air, right? That's the vapor pressure that it's referring to, right?
That's the pressure deficit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, when the pressure deficit is very high, it's literally exerting pressure to suck that water out of whatever. It sucks it out of your clothes. It sucks it out of your plant. It sucks it out of your swimming pool, your lawn, or wherever, right? It's very dry air that's forcing that evaporation. All right. And that's important. But now, VPD is entirely determined by relative humidity and temperature.
And it's a wide range on that green part, right? It's not just good VPD up towards the high temperatures. You can still be in the green and be pushing yourself into a low temperature that cannabis, for instance, probably won't like.
Absolutely. So we talked about sort of high VPD is, high temperatures or low relative humidity. A low VPD is, low temperatures or high relative humidity. But what is, say an ideal VPD? An ideal VPD could be ideal temperature and ideal relative humidity, or it could be way too hot and way too wet.
Exactly.
Or it could be way too cold and way too dry. But as long as you sort of match those up correctly, you could still be at the ideal VPD, right?
Exactly.
So you don't want to be too hot and too wet. That would still give you the same VPD potentially. Say you want a VPD of 1. Well, you could get to a VPD of 1 with a really hot grow that has a really high relative humidity. Or you could get to a VPD of 1 with a really cold grow with a really low relative humidity.
Exactly.
They aren't all going to grow the same way at all. So yeah, it can't become the driver of the bus. It's got to be a passenger on the climate bus here as you're managing your grow. It's one of the things that you want to be aware of. But and I remember last time we were talking about this, we both agreed that temperature really should be the driver of your climate bus.
Yes, that's what you said last time. Temperature is king. And that is so true, because what I want to push back and have the takeaway for, growers who use this chart from this episode to be is if you look at it like, as long as I'm in this green, I'm good, you're working backwards. And my biggest pushback to that is, look at this chart, look at all the different temperatures. Doesn't it depend on your cultivar? I mean, if you're growing something from Afghanistan, like I tried to grow in my cold Illinois basement, you're going to run into issues with the plant not being happy because of its lineage. It's accustomed to something warm. I don't care how good the VPD is. If you put it in a cold space, it's going to be pissed off. So I experienced that personally, I feel like. So I guess that's my next question is like, it's cultivar dependent. No, I've certainly experienced plants that like it a little bit warmer or a little bit cooler.
Sure. I think that's even more true if we were really cultivating different crops.
True.
But we are generally cultivating cannabis. And like you say, there's going to be temperature differences in terms of where they'll be ideal for different varieties.
Slight ones, yeah.
Yeah, but they're not as significant as if you were growing, like avocados
lettuce
and celery together
cold
in the same space or something like that. Then you'd have sort of bigger climate differences between what
really
your two
good
crops
point.
needed.
But you say temperature is king, and like cannabis likes it warm. They like it warmer than we like it when we're wearing clothes. You know what I mean? They like a warm environment. And a lot of people are like, I wanted to get that VPD right, so I cranked my temperature down. It's like you're slowing growth, you're slowing the driving of the photosynthetic process. And I don't know, that's just what I see. And I want to keep growers from falling into that trap.
I absolutely agree with that. I really kind of think that in terms of the numbers, I don't think you have to become too particular about knowing what number VPD you're sort of aiming at or where you are. I think that to a certain extent, you should understand the principles of VPD, but let's get into that a little bit. So if you have a temperature range and you're able to maintain your grow within that temperature range, say up to the low 80s, it lights on and maybe, not much below high 60s at lights off.
Sure.
That's a pretty decent temperature range.
Good range under LEDs, especially. Right? That's a good tent, like general home setup.
Yeah. And if you're right with the ventilated grow.
Yeah.
And if your relative humidity, ideally, we start it high, and it's sort of inconvenient because the plants do the opposite. The plants put out most of their humidity late in the grow. When they're young, they don't put out a lot of humidity, but they want more humidity. When they're older, they put out a lot of humidity, but they don't really want as much.
True.
So early on, a lot of growers have to add humidity when they just have seedlings, right? We're trying to keep humidity, like real seedlings, maybe 75. And then as the plants start to get into veg, we're like 65% humidity. Into flower, we're usually going to drop it, below 60 or at least down to 60. And the reason there is mold mitigation. We're trying to hedge against getting bud rot. And that's really why we're dropping the relative humidity in flower. It's not because it's better for VPD or something, or it's better for transpiration. The reason we drop humidity is because we risk bud rot if we don't drop humidity.
Good point.
Dropping humidity, and if you're really following sort of VPD recommendations, which again, Jordan and I both just said, don't really do that. But VPD recommendations often then suggest going higher with VPD late in flower. And that's not about VPD at all. That going higher with VPD late in flower is because growers lower their relative humidity to prevent mold. Lower relative humidity at the same temperature produces a higher VPD.
Right.
Even the chart that's telling you like be at 1.2 in early flower and 1.4, 1.5 in late flower, the reason they went from 1.2 to 1.5 has nothing to do with transpiration. And frankly, it has nothing to do with VPD. It has everything to do with you need to lower your relative humidity to prevent bud rot.
Wow, it needs to say that.
I know, but that's why you're not really using VPD anyways. So
yeah.
even the VPD chart, even the guide there, it's making those adjustments because they know that, at the last few weeks of flower, you're going to be running at 80 and like 50% humidity, which is going to be 1 point whatever VPD. So they want to sort of tell you to go there. But the problem is they don't tell you how to get there.
Yes.
You could get to, 1.5 VPD by cranking up the temperature at the same relative humidity or cranking down the relative humidity at the same temperature. And that's again, why VPD is kind of a way to describe your grow, but it really shouldn't be the thing that you chase.
It can be a red herring, 100%. Now, should they add this asterisk? Tell me if this would solve the problem in your eyes. In order to use this chart properly, achieve your ideal temperature and then adjust VPD changing your relative humidity.
This is what I actually think, Jordan. Set your temperature, set your relative humidity, and then, if you're curious, check and see what your VPD is.
That's exactly right. That's
great.
If
you follow the rough guidelines that I just laid down for temperatures and humidities at different stages of the grow, you're going to be in the green zone or close to the green zone on those charts.
Yeah, good call.
Anyways, absolutely. Because you're setting the temperature and the relative humidity right. The issue with sort of VPD is most growers have an easier time controlling temperature than they do controlling humidity, to the extent that they can control anything in their growth phases anyways.
That's a good point.
So when they're chasing VPD, it's like they don't have much of a lever to screw with the humidity often. The lever that they can manipulate is the temperature. And so that's what they end up doing, which is the opposite of kind of the advice that you laid down, which is good advice.
That's a really good point. They'll just turn down their light and turn up their exhaust fan. That's why it's good to have a humidifier or a dehumidifier.
I think you need a humidifier for early on during the grow. If you're investing in technology, I'd really suggest getting an AC as your climate control motor. You can use your air conditioner as a dehumidifier, basically. Yeah. I mean, air conditioning dehumidifies because the colder plate reaches the dew point and condenses water. So,
yeah.
Air conditioners always condense water and that is dehumidification. They actually do it as efficiently as dehumidifiers do. It can make the space too cold sometimes, but then you can add some heat if you need to. But yeah, I do think it's easier to manage climate with an air conditioner, but then that does put you more in control of temperature than humidity.
Yeah. And really it's like a lot of this is geographic. Like you said, Arizona and New Mexico coming online, when we get like an influx of new members from these desert states, yeah. I almost have to like reframe my whole thinking.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we're in the desert now. You know what I mean? I'm used to, in Chicago, it was the reverse. The driest time of year was winter when it was cold and dry, right? They have hot and dry all year round.
And it's beautiful. If you're up in the upper Midwest, the winters there are perfect for growing. Nice, dry, cool air. That's kind of like ideal. It's great for being able to set the right temperatures for your dry, at the end of the harvest and not overheat your buds and all that. So there's definitely advantages there. But yeah, I agree. It's the other side of the spectrum. Growers in Arizona, for example, are almost all doing that I work with, at least like the home growers are doing ventilated tents in air conditioned houses. And they're exhausting this hot, wet air back into like one room in their air conditioned house. And that sometimes is an issue. So we have to get it back towards the return to that system or put a little duct boost fan into the duct that's going into that room or different things like that. So there's definitely different issues, different parts of the country, different climates have to manage. But most of us, I think, are still, it's a little bit easier to manage temperature often than it is to to manipulate relative humidity, at least to manipulate relative humidity down most of the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think it's exactly why people go down that road to changing the temperature and then sometimes shoot themselves in the foot. So I just want to like get people focusing, like you said on the first episode, temperature is king. Like get that locked down first, adjust the humidity from there, and then be aware of your local environment and your seasons, because that's going to largely dictate what you need to do to gain optimal environment settings.
There's at least 3 things that you want to keep in mind when you're thinking about climate, and like at least 3, but these are 3 big ones. One is transpiration. And transpiration is really regulated by VPD, which is the combination of temperature and relative humidity. The other is metabolic activity. And metabolic activity is going to be in the sweet spot when the temperature is right. So you really do want to be in the, near or in the low 80s under LED light during the photo period to have the best metabolic activity. Relative humidity is hugely important for mold and mildew. You want to be able to prevent and mitigate against the risks of mold and mildew. So we have kind of 3 important climate-related crop management issues. We have ideal transpiration, ideal metabolic activity, and preventing mold and mildew. They're all related to either temp or humidity or both, right? So we need to be able to kind of
keep all those plates spinning. They all have to spin. You can't completely neglect one, or else you're going to end up with broken plate on your floor.
Exactly.
That's a really good analogy.
And there is, good temperatures to be at if you can reach those temperatures and then try to manipulate your relative humidity. Usually our efforts to manipulate the relative humidity are to try to lower it, because the plants produce a lot of humidity and we need to take that out of the system.
Right. Growcast membership, it's waiting for you. If you love this show, you will love our membership program. We just dropped a whole new content flow. There's something going on every single day in Growcast membership virtually. Monday, you get this show dropping in your podcast feed. Every Tuesday, the members get a video for members only. These are quick hit educational videos. If you're a good visual learner, you will love our members only video archives on Mondays. Every Wednesday, we've got Growcast TV, a live web show. You can come interact, check us out as a video web show, get your questions answered, watch interviews live, play games. It's so much fun on Growcast TV. Plus, we've got giveaways every single Thursday, Q&A streams every other Saturday, and every Friday, we do a Discord hangout. We're all hanging out together, smoking, growing, helping each other out. It's all in Growcast membership. It's waiting for you at growcastpodcast.com/membership. It'll bring you right there. You get hundreds of hours of bonus content, access to our live streams, access to our members-only Discord where I'm hanging out every day. Come and see us. Come and hang out with me and Wolfman and Mary Beth and everybody in membership. Rizo Rich is in there. We got everybody, all your favorite guests. They're up in the Discord. Come and hang out with us, everybody. It is a blast. Plus, we'll solve any garden problems you have. So if you're a grower, if you like this show, you will love Growcast membership. We got a whole brand new content flow that just dropped. If you're an old member, come and check it out. We've got a lot more offerings now, monthly resources, bigger and better giveaways. It's all waiting for you in membership. Huge thank you to the members who are tuned in right now. You make this show possible. You make this community possible. I appreciate every single one of you so much. Check it out, everybody. growcastpodcast.com/membership. I'll see you there. One of the reasons that I like to teach beginner growers, especially, how to clone and take their cuttings and go for another run is exactly what you just said. Like you're learning to spin all those plates. I think it's a great place to start to learn the intricacies and tendencies of one cultivar and really get to know what this plant likes and how to make it happy. I think the more variety of cannabis you grow in your tent, and like you said, especially if you start growing other plants, you're going to be challenged more. Right. You're going to run into more issues. You're also going to learn more if you solve those issues and work through them. But I think for a beginner, it's good to stick with one cultivar for a minute and run it until you can get it through the whole cycle without any scorch or yellowing, or it's just praying the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Figure out how to keep your plants happy. And that's really what it's all about. And I do think it makes it easier to sort of simplify things, to be working with one cultivar. Almost every grower wants to have 6 different strains to smoke, though. So they want to grow 6 plants, right?
You'll see
To
the
dial it
differences
in.
when you run those 6 different packs. Like, and the environment's probably one of the ones that's like the least changing. I certainly see differences in feeding. Like one plant will feed much heavier than another, or want like a really specific. It'll run out of like zinc, some micronutrient, right? Like clearly it was heavy feeding on the
We
zinc.
get less of that in high frequency fertigation, I will say, because you're just sort of providing better access to everything, and is not sort of a set stock amount of anything in the media to kind of deplete, if that makes sense.
So put them in Coco with high frequency fertigation is what you're saying, with 7 different strains. That's the move.
I think if you want to grow 7 different strains, it definitely helps to be growing with fertigation as opposed to amending, for the reason that you're saying. Different cultivars will sort of deplete amended soils at different rates.
Totally.
So it becomes harder to manage a mixed cropped room. But when you're fertigating, you're not going to deplete the nutrients. You're replenishing them with every feeding of. And, I've done several commercial facilities where the SOP is to grow 8 to 10 strains together in a flower room, all in the same diet.
Right. Yeah.
So,
That is a really good point. I hear a lot of breeders saying, I pheno hunt, especially like in smaller pots with fertigation for many reasons, one of which being what you just said, like a consistent diet. And then, like you said, when you switch outside of cannabis, that's when, I think there are some plants that just aren't feasible to be grown together, to be honest, right?
absolutely. Some plants really have different climate requirements, especially perennial plants. Annuals often are sort of can grow in the warm growing climate in lots of different places, and then they just die before the seasons change. But there's definitely differences between what kind of crops can grow in different climates, for sure. And if you were going to try to grow those things indoors, you'd have to tailor your climate to them.
Right.
Cannabis is fairly easy, because it's a little bit warmer and a little bit more humid than we like, and they create their own humidity, and the lights create their own heat. So it's kind of in the sweet spot. It would be easier than growing a lot of other crops.
That's certainly how I feel. I don't think we've done like VeggieCast with you, at least for a while. And we hear about tomatoes and peppers. I think a lot of cannabis growers jump over to those.
Yeah.
But what do you like to recommend cannabis growers grow? Maybe even in like a cocoa setup like you're doing, that they could easily transition over to.
Certainly, tomatoes and peppers are pretty high value, and they offer a huge quality, improvement over what you can get at a store. Tomatoes, in particular, there's nothing like growing your own tomatoes, even if you don't. I don't really like tomatoes, but that's because you generally get gas green tomatoes. Homegrown tomatoes are just like a different fruit. I mean, they're just like not the same thing. So that's beautiful. A lot of the squashes, and I'm kind of thinking specifically here about the crops that do well also with our runoff water, because we get a lot of growers that want to repurpose their runoff.
Yeah.
So squashes, tomatoes, peppers, some of the, other kind of veggies, like you can grow some flowering veggies like broccoli, cauliflower, stuff like that. Not legumes, though, certainly not with our water that we'd want to use, but fun things to grow for other reasons. And maybe legumes would be something more up the alley of the organic growers, the organic indoor growers that want to look at sort of mixed crop nitrogen fixing strategies and stuff like
right. Because they specifically pull atmospheric nitrogen and put it in their little root nodules for decomposition later.
Basically, they form symbiotic relationships with bacteria that fix nitrogen and store it in their root nodules. Yeah, exactly. But that happens because the beans are there, the legumes are there.
I like a good legume, man. Let me tell you. And you're right. Tomatoes, peppers, these are all things I eat. So this is good. This is good stuff.
Peanuts. There's your unexpected legume.
Yeah, peanuts for sure. The delicious and robust peanut. My man George Washington Carver knows what's up. The greatest legume, some might say.
Yeah.
Listen, man, we've gone all over from VPD to
We've
peanuts.
gone off the
What are we
board.
talking about?
We were talking about VPD. I remember the last time we were talking about VPD, I made this point too. VPD controls transpiration out of the plant. And so it's basically a measure of how fast the plant is going to lose water, assuming it keeps its stomata open. If the VPD gets really high, the plant will shut down its stomata to prevent dehydrating, essentially, especially if it doesn't have access to a lot of water in its roots. So this is where I'm going with this. VPD determines how fast water leaves the plant. Electrical conductivity of the water determines how fast the water can enter the plant through the roots.
Wow.
So then one of the reasons is really the reason that we measure electrical conductivity. It's not to know how much nutrients are in the water. A lot of fertigators believe that they're trying to measure like the dose that they're giving. It's not about that. You're measuring basically how hard it is for the plant to absorb the water. So that EC is like the other side of the VPD coin. If VPD is on one side of the coin, EC is on the other side of the coin. A high VPD means a lot of water is leaving the plant. And you need to pair that with a low EC, because a low EC will allow a lot of water to enter the plant. A high EC, it's going to be harder for the plant to get water. So when the plant's losing a lot of water to transpiration, you want to lower your EC in the root zone. And if there's nothing else you can do, so you're dealing with, high temperatures, low humidity, and, you've got all your climate control devices cranked up and you still can't manage it, then that's what you've got to do. You've got to lower your root zone EC so that plants can have an easier time taking up water so that, they can still push that much water through themselves, essentially.
That is fascinating.
If you're in the opposite situation and you're fertigating, so if you get in a situation where you're dealing with low VPD and you can't change it, you can't raise the temperatures or you can't sort of lower the relative humidity, then you should increase the EC because the plant is going to be taking up less water. It's going to be sort of transporting less nutrients through its xylem because it's taking in less water, and increasing the concentration of the nutrients will allow it to sort of take in more nutrients.
Enough nutrients. I totally see what you're saying. And that's like when your plant is looking all droopy and sad and it's not driving from the cold wetness. I've seen what that looks like, what you're describing. And you want to raise the strength of the solution, if that's the case, to be able to still deliver those nutrients.
And not to be sort of putting too much water into the plant, because the plant's not going to be able to get rid of that water because the VPD is too high. So that's one of the ways that, at the beginning of the conversation, I was saying, like, it's one of these things that's good to know sort of theoretically. I don't think you need to know your specific number, but this is one of those cases. If you know my tent is running hot and dry these days, right, because it's hot and dry out suddenly or whatever, then lower your EC. And that's something that happens to a lot of growers, and that can really kind of help get through those more difficult moments like that. So there's a relationship there. And if you think about VPD as one of those key climate variables that determines how fast water moves through the plant, and EC is really the other one that determines how fast water can move through the plant. So
that is
in a lot of
eye-opener.
cases,
that's great.
It's helpful to sort of understand how they interact with each other like that. During the dry, for example, when we're drying our buds, we often talk about like 60 and 60 in terms of temperature and relative humidity. The way moisture is leaving the buds is really a function of VPD.
Right.
Still, right? It's vapor pressure deficit. So that's another time that, you can be aware of if like your room is too hot, hotter than you would want it to be during the dry, then you may want to keep the humidity a little bit higher. If it's too cold, then you may want to keep the humidity,
A little bit lower. That makes perfect sense. VPD during the dry, that's another game changer. And I like the first thing you said about get your temperature on point, then dial in your humidity. If you're curious, take a look at the chart. That's like the big takeaway.
Yeah.
But I love that too, applying it to your dry space. I almost never hear people talking about their VPD in relation to their dry space. And that's probably where it's more of a direct example than anything, because the plant isn't doing anything else. It's just water leaving the
drying. Yeah.
Now dead buds.
And you really don't want to, if you have too low of a VPD, you're going to get mold potentially. If you have too high of a VPD, it's going to be, too fast of a dry, and it's going to be a harsher smoke and all of that. So, and, growers, almost all home growers can't reach the ideal sort of 60-60 that's often bandied about for drying. Like there's just no way they're getting to 60 degrees unless they're living in Chicago in the winter, right? Like they're not going to get their air conditioners down to 60 degrees and keeping that. So if you can, just understand how to make those adjustments. You don't have to make big adjustments either, but there's a relationship there.
Yeah, fine tuning it.
Yeah, both temperature and relative humidity combine to determine how fast water evaporates, essentially.
That is a great point. And I tell people all the time, if you don't have to like drive yourself crazy for that 60-60 dry.
Right.
You really don't. If you're under 70, if you're like 68 and below, I'm happy for you. If you're at 50 to 55 relative humidity, you're fine. That's usually what I tell people.
I agree. I think it's just you're going to be done a little bit early if you're there. And just stay on top of it in all of these conditions. The other one, is when growers are too wet in their environment or whatever, they often, if they're in that humid area, they might not be able to get down to 60% humidity. Oftentimes you can if you're running air conditioning, but those are all things. You can be a little bit outside of that range. But again, temperature is important when you're drying there too. It's not just VPD. You don't want to be at 120 degrees Fahrenheit because that's the only temperature you can get the VPD right or whatever, because you're going to burn off a bunch of other things. So you still want to be at or about there. But to the extent that you can't get one of those metrics exactly on par, you can adjust the other one a little bit to still have the same VPD.
Yeah.
That's if what you're worried about is the evaporation. And I think we're a little bit more worried about the evaporation during the dry than we are about the transpiration during the grow. At least there's other things like the metabolic activity that we need to be more aware of during the grow.
Right. It's more of a one-to-one comparison. But I also think about that vapor pressure deficit, which, by the way, isn't a pressure deficit just a vacuum?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay, so why isn't it, VV?
Vapor vacuum? VV?
So I think about that vacuum that's occurring and how that affects the trichome heads, right? Because you're right. It's like we worry about light and we worry about heat volatilizing the terpenes in there. But do you think that the VPD is, sucking terpenes out if it's two? Or am I way off base here?
No, I mean, I definitely think that, temperature's going to have an effect on the terpenes and the trichomes too.
Probably primarily, I imagine.
Yeah, but there are potentially areas where getting it very dried out from low relative humidity may happen. But that is another thing. I don't think it would be just VPD, but like it's involved with VPD.
Sure, right. The volatilization is probably easier if there's a vacuum along with it. That's a really astute point. Yeah, I was just thinking about that vacuum, right? And then the like waxy membrane of the trichome head and how those two might interplay.
Yeah, well, you're not actually getting like a Kirby in there, like, sucking them off the plant. I hear you. That's what I've often said. We want to really keep things comfortable for the plants. We don't want to be putting undue pressure on them from any of these directions. And I know a lot of growers think that selective or appropriate stressing is going to be kind of the key to unlocking the magic. I really think the key to unlocking the magic is to keep things kind of more down the middle of the road, to keep the plants happy, to not kind of put undue stress on them. And I don't know what sort of a radical VPD would do to like the trichomes or the terpenes themselves, but the heat alone is going to burn off a bunch of stuff. So
Right.
that is, and I think that was one of the main points that you wanted to nail. If you just pay attention to VPD, you can really get these other things out of hand, and the other things are important in their own right. So pay attention to temperature, be in the right temperature, and then you can think about some of these other things.
Man, I love it. That was everything I hoped for in this episode and more. 45 straight minutes on vapor pressure deficit.
Indeed. We got a little bit into sort of some other gardening stuff and growing different plants.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. No, I think we gotta get back on Dr. Corncob and talk about some corn breeding or something next time. No, next time let's do cloning. And
let's do cloning.
Yeah, and
I look forward to that.
And I would like to revisit those episodes. Someone just wrote me about them where we were talking, speaking of corn and stuff, we were talking about the different agricultural history, basically different agricultural revolutions, and people really liked that content too. So maybe after cloning, we can revisit some of that stuff.
I'd be really thrilled to. Yeah, I'm always excited about talking about sort of where plants have come from and what we can learn as home growers from all of that. I think it's fascinating. So I'd love to come back on, talk about any of those things. I definitely like to come back on, talk about cloning. It's been a while since I've done cloning in my own grow, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, we got to see that Coco clone setup, man.
There you go.
It's good stuff. Well, one more time, cocoforcannabis.com, New Year's Grow Challenge. Give us the rundown.
Yep. Starting January 1st. If you're a few days late, you can always jump in and be part of it. Free to join. Grow any seeds you want to. We do have a couple of official strains from Homegrown Cannabis Company, but you grow any strains that you want to. A lot of people grow all sorts of different things, and it's just a fun time to start growing together. We're doing the cloning challenge starting on February 5th, like 35 days after the main grow starts. And there'll be prizes and just fun to be had. So sign up at cocoforcannabis.com/challenge. You can also check me out on YouTube at Dr. MJ Coco on YouTube and on Instagram at Dr. MJ Coco. And here on the Growcast podcast with Jordan River. I always love coming on.
Thank you, man. This was a dope episode. I appreciate you. Anything you need, just hit us up. And we'll see you in the challenge.
One more drop I have. I'll invite people to come and check me out on Patreon. I do the Ask Dr. Coco show every week on Patreon for my subscribers. And it's the best place to kind of track me down, be able to ask questions and come and show your grow and really get kind of that one-on-one consultation. So if you're looking for that, check me out on Patreon.
All right, everybody, go check it out. cocoforcannabis.com, get in on the challenge, check out the Patreon. Thank you, Dr. Coco. We appreciate you, man. We'll have you back on real soon, okay?
Absolutely, Jordan. My pleasure, and grower love to you and everybody out there. Happy New Year.
See you guys. We'll see you next time. Got some more Growcast coming at you, so don't touch that dial. This is Dr. Coco and Jordan River signing off, saying be safe out there, everybody, and grow smarter. That's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and thank you to Dr. Coco. Of course, growcastpodcast.com for all the things. Jump into membership. We got a link right up there. Hundreds of hours of bonus content. We got member-only videos, giveaways, hangouts, everything you want, plus more. It's waiting for you in membership. Plus, you get $20 off per pack of Growcast Seedco seeds. We just dropped the Apes in Space line. Go and grab some Apes in Space. And if you're a member, you get $20 off per pack. So growcastpodcast.com for everything. The seeds, the membership, and everything we are doing. That's all for today. Be good. Be safe. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you on the next Growcast. Bye-bye now.
That's a pretty big plan.